286 with Bethany Rolando. And last time we talked about getting into Antarctica. Oh, my microphone's not turned all the way up. Last time we talked about getting into Antarctica, and last week I had on, for everyone listening, I had on Dr. Jerome Corsi and his book Hunting Hitler, and new evidence of the Nazi high command escaping. We know that was a thing. We know the Mossad found Adolf Eichmann in I think the 40s or was it 50s in South America. We know Mengele died of a stroke while swimming in South America. And there are reports of Hitler and Eva Braun appearing in Antarctica. Point being is the entire thing's kind of absurd. And for everyone that doesn't know, in 1947, the United States sent down an aircraft carrier and 10,000 troops during Operation High Jump under Admiral Byrd, Byrd, to Antarctica, which is a little weird, sending down like an entire armada, like a Normandy invasion force, just to go quote unquote check it out. But we also know that the Nazis went down there in 1938 on the SS Schwabia, and they set up New Schwabenland, and Heinrich Himmler wanted to set up Base 211, which was going to be a Nazi base. Admiral Dönitz, the one who succeeded Hitler, went down there with U-boats and had some really weird quotes about setting up a Shangri-La at the bottom of the earth, which is odd. And we know that they put 5-foot-tall metal spikes dropped from planes all along the coast with swastikas at the top. That's not a conspiracy. That's what they did. They did it in 1938, and they announced it. So we kind of got into that last time because Bethany, like me, loves UFOs and the absurd. And I've now been talking for almost 2 minutes without letting you say a word. So
it sounds like you pretty much covered it.
Okay, well, is that it? Is that the end of the podcast? Did we finish?
Ever.
Okay, well, shortest podcast ever. Everybody stay safe, and see you next time. But yeah, no, we want to get into Antarctica because it is absurd. There's no way around that. It is absurd. It's absurd that John Kerry went down there on election night 2016. It's absurd that the head of the Russian Orthodox Church went down there. It's weird that Buzz Aldrin went down there and then was medically evacuated. It's weird that the Nazis went in 1938. And no, not only that, the admiral we sent down in 1947, don't you do that. The admiral we sent down in 1947, the Nazis tried to contract him to come down with them in 1938, which is a little weird. But I'm now coming on 3 minutes of me talking, so.
It sounds like you got it all pretty much covered. I'm talking about Antarctica because that's what your followers all wanted to hear us talk about in the comments when we discussed.
More importantly, that's what I want to talk about.
So what?
I said, more importantly, it's what I want to talk about.
Okay, yeah, that's true. You're not beholden to anyone. And so I'm really excited to be back to talk about it. I'm glad that people wanted to have me back on to talk about it. There's a lot going on down in Antarctica and a lot of question marks. And so, yeah, it was pretty weird that Hitler was exploring Antarctica. But when he initially went down, he said it was because of exploration, just kind of like the United States did. The timing is interesting because they were planning this during their war planning period because they were going to invade Poland a year from the date that they went down. And so really it's a question of, was it really about a breakaway civilization? I used to think so, but now I don't. Because at the time, Hitler was actually, the odds of them winning in the war, they were very confident the odds were in their favor. And so I don't really necessarily think it was an escape. This was something that they put a lot of thought into and something that they invested a lot of time, effort, money in. But the timing is interesting, as you said, in 1938, and then dropped swastikas down all over the island. And, the United States going down Operation High Jump, and that was also supposed to be an exploration on the States' part, and we ended up losing men. I mean, we had aircraft carriers, we had helicopters and planes and all of this equipment, and men lost their lives over it, and then it was pretty much never spoken of again.
Yeah. Not to mention Admiral Byrd came back up, and who was appointed by FDR originally. Before, obviously, FDR died in 1945. But this guy...
thing is that whenever Admiral Byrd, whenever they fled, they actually stopped in Chile first. And so Byrd actually did an interview with a journalist on the El Mercurio, I think is the name of the newspaper. And he actually made a statement, and I'm not going to quote it because it's not exact words, but that the U.S. would have to be prepared to fight with UFOs in the future, with hovering crafts that can shoot from back and forth and left and right, and they come together and they separate rapidly. They can hover without movement in the air, which is way more advanced than anything that we had at the time. And so whenever he got back to the United States, he was taken to the hospital. He was incommunicado for like 5 days, and then he was told to never speak publicly about it ever again.
Yeah. Admiral Byrd literally came out and said, I think the loose quote is, the next war will be fought with craft that can travel at incredible speed from pole to pole.
That's it, yeah. And they were supposed to go down for 6 months. They ended it in 2 months. They sent 13 ships, actually. And then one aircraft carrier I looked up was the Philippine Sea. And so these were really large. It was large equipment that we were sending down. For exploration.
For exploration, which I mean, I guess kind of makes sense, right? Because if you look at it from like the 1800s standpoint, right, like an 1800s, early 1900s sort of like imperialist way, we would go, quote, explore new lands that had spices and gold, and we would go explore with 10,000 troops. Yeah, I mean, let's just be real. We were going in there to slaughter the indigenous and take all their stuff. But, okay, that would make sense if we were going to explore, whatever, Australia. But we went to Antarctica, where there's supposedly no indigenous or no life for us to have to, go fight and, create a trade route with. So even if you take that sort of imperialist kind of oppressive viewpoint, why were we doing that in Antarctica? Other than
to go after the Germans. And then also it was interesting because Oberth, one of the scientists.
Herman Oberth.
Yeah, he actually said, we were helped.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It wasn't Germany. I mean, Germans are smart and they're good at what they do, but he even admitted publicly that it was help from.
Yeah. They said they had help from aliens. I mean, what the heck is her name? I cannot remember her name, but that girl who was in the Vril Society, VRIL, which was like an occult group there. Maria Orsic.
Orsic. Yeah. She was in the German Vril Society. She claimed that she could telepathically communicate with aliens.
Yeah.
And, a part of one of the stars, and that was like 60 plus light years away from Earth.
Yeah, and I think
Hitler actually found her to be the epitome of like the ideal Aryan female.
Yeah, no, she wasn't she wasn't smoking bath salts out of like a tavern somewhere. Like Hitler thought she was the ideal, I think the quote is, the ideal Aryan maiden. She thought that she was in touch with through telepathic connections, through seances and sex rituals. She thought she could contact beings from Aldebaran, the star Aldebaran, as well as I think Betelgeuse. And one of the things that she was supposedly given, but really is
I know, it's just funny.
Yeah. One of the things she thought she got was like schematics for like a craft, which Alex Jones said that on his second appearance on Joe Rogan. I don't believe this, Joe, but the Nazis believe it. They thought they could get in touch, and they were given advanced technology from an off-world being. But it's kind of weird because she did say this back in like the 40s.
I think it's 100% legit.
Why wouldn't it be? And I bring this up, and for everyone, of course, I have my Alex Jones hoodie on, but
the one that's so popular, the UFO one.
Yeah, I know, but it's awesome. But I mean, but that's, I'm going to get way off topic. But it's why wouldn't it be something like that, right? We know that there are aircraft dropping supplies in World War II in the South Pacific, and every once in a while the supplies would land on the wrong island, and the indigenous people would think it was God because they had never seen anything, and all of a sudden they're getting bottled water and food. So sure, but even then, point being is, Maria Orsic, Herman Oberth said that we are helped by someone else, right? So so how do we tie this back down to Antarctica?
Well, it's interesting because people say that Antarctica is kind of the central crossing hub between aliens and humans. It's not the only one. I mean, they have hubs in Egypt and Argentina and Australia and Alaska. I mean, there's stuff all over the place, but this is the most accessed and most used. And there was actually a whistleblower, two of them, one from the Marine Corps and then a U.S. Navy SEAL, who gave their entire story about their personal experience visiting Antarctica. And they would do it usually the way that we go in and out of Antarctica in terms of these bases. Is that what you're talking about? Do you want to get into like the whole fact that there are
everything
and buildings that are there that are made of it looks like black marble, and there's only about 18 feet or so that you can see outside of the snow, but you can't miss it because it's shiny and black and glittery. And then whenever you go in, it takes up each base takes up 62 acres of land, and it's all under the ice in Antarctica.
So who's that from? That's from the Navy SEAL?
Yeah. So this is from a U.S. Navy SEAL and former. He left the service in, I think, 2004, and then a former U.S. Marine.
So I guess the question is were the Nazis going there simply to originally, it's what we're laying out is later on in the 40s, it could have been seen as like that was their golden parachute. That was their bailout. Early on, it was, no, we are the 1,000-year Reich and we're going to conquer the world. Do you think?
Well, that's exactly what it was. I mean, Hitler wanted to wipe out and create a dominant race.
Everywhere. Oh yeah, no. He had plans to build structures all across the United States. No, he wasn't just going to take the Sudetenland and Lebensraum. He wanted the Earth.
Well, and it's interesting to talk about the Aryan race because the word Aryan, I think, actually has ties back to like Iran or Iraq, and Iran actually means kingdom of the Aryans or something like that, and so it goes all the way back to that. It ties back to that. Have you seen that? I could probably Google it really quick.
Mm-mm. But I know they found swastikas in ancient civilizations back to the dawn of time and on every continent. The Nazis. Yeah.
Too, if you want.
No, dude, do it all. I don't. No, do it all. It's.
I want to know. I thought I wrote it down somewhere. Go ahead though. Okay. Oh, I found it. Hitler wanted to install humans. Aryan means Arya, the West Indian. Iran means kingdom of the Aryans. The first known civilization to call themselves Aryans was an Aryavarta in 1500 BC, which is over there. And then a French author made it about race in the 1800s. Whenever he wrote, whenever his name was Nicholas Goodard Clark, and he wrote a book about how Aryans are the superior race over other race, and so it became a political ideology from that point on.
Yeah, well, that
and tried to push forward.
Yeah, well, that was their whole reasoning behind Lebensraum. It wasn't just that, right? Because it's kind of like the United States with Manifest Destiny. You can't just kind of go and be like, we're going to kill everyone. Like, you got to put a little bit of dressing on it, like a little window dressing. Be like, no, God said we can. So we're all like, okay, you can do it. That's what they did with Lebensraum, was like, we need living room. Or living space. That's just like, we as the perfect people, we need living space. We kind of got to throw some elbows, maybe kill everybody. But, hey, here's a new home in a big lawn.
I guess that's true. That could be true. I've been thinking about it. What were his motivations? I mean, I definitely think that he was an evil human who wanted power and complete control. But if he was interacting and communicating with aliens at that time, was it from something he just felt in himself, or was it a part of another plan that was helped put together from a species of aliens? Because there are several different types of aliens out there. The same whistleblower, this former U.S. Navy SEAL, actually confirmed that there were 7 that he knew of that we were in communication with, 4 in favor of helping the planet, and 3 that were trying to destroy the planet.
So it's a fractal, right? So it's proxy wars. It's back to us and China and the Soviet Union, or Russia, in Vietnam, in Korea, in Syria now, in the Middle East. Like, it's all a proxy war.
The thing is that everybody's in on it, right? So that's the thing that actually got me into Antarctica in the first place, is whenever John Kerry went down at the end of 2016, and then he came for exploration again. Everyone's going for exploration.
Oh yeah,
the visuals are great. You got to go see it.
You got to just
Comes back and he institutes this 35-year ban. Not a ban, but you can't go to Antarctica unless you acquire permission from the UN, essentially. And that's when I started looking into Antarctica. How long have you been into Antarctica?
Probably like 2018. Well, I don't know, because I thought it was weird, because I first started following, again, when John Kerry went down in 2016. I thought that was odd.
Same time,
probably about the same time, yeah. But what really got me more and more was, I don't know, 2019, reading about all the Nazis that actually... I always thought it was a conspiracy that they went to South America, until it was like, no, the Israeli Mossad literally went down and kidnapped Adolf Eichmann and brought him to Israel and put him on trial and hung him. Like, that's a fact. And so that kind of blew my mind.
Why did you think that it was a conspiracy, though?
It was just one of those general, like, I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, that's just absurd. It just, in general, which a lot of this stuff always turns out to be true. Like, oh, it's absurd. We didn't do that. Why would, I think before I ever heard about Operation High Jump, I'm sure I'd seen, like, thumbnails of it on YouTube, and I was like, that's some just crummy, like, clickbait. But then, like, we actually did go, and it's very odd.
Incredibly odd. And the fact that we have all of these facilities under the ice, because, we have bases on top of the ice, in the American bases, McMurdo, and on there's a no-fly zone right after you get to Pole, next to the Beermore Glaciers. There's like a no-fly zone. There's actually a really interesting story by somebody told Linda Moulton Howe, who I would encourage anybody to look into. I love her. But he was one of the pilots on the plane that would travel back and forth. And there was a burn incident, like a kitchen explosion in the Australian base camp, which was on the east side. And they had to get there. They knew it was going to be like a 5-hour flight. And the captain said, does anybody know why we can't go over this no-fly zone? We need to, cut out significant amounts of time.
Yeah.
He needs a med vac with ASAP. And the answer he got back was that they wanted to protect the air in that area of Antarctica. And he said, but we're going to be 35,000 feet in the air. We're not going to impact anything about the air down there. He's like, let's just go. He made a judgment call. They ended up flying over the no-fly zone. Everybody who was on that plane had their head like out the window trying to see what was in this no-fly zone. And it was a hole, and it looked like it was a ramp going down into the ground. It looked like it was like a visual, like an eye trick, a visual trick, but it looked like it was something that was like going kind of down into the ice. And then there were a whole bunch of rumors about it. In 1995, 97, in that time frame, the National Science Foundation of Scientists that went down from America were at that base, supposedly going around that circle. And they were supposed to call in every 24 hours after they were dropped off to be told that they were okay. They didn't call. And then like on the 5th day, people flew out there on the plane. The same guy that gave the testimony to Linda flew out. Nobody was there. There was zero movement. Everybody was totally perplexed. A week later, so now the scientists have been missing for 2 weeks, they automatically arrive. And so then they go back out to get them. And they think that these scientists are going to be so excited. They're going to be like, well, we're saved, thank goodness. But that they were all just very quiet, that they were all standing in a line, that they all got on the plane. At one point, Brian asks the guy talking to Linda, leans over and puts his hand on the guy's knee or shoulder and says, is there anything I can do for you? And the guy doesn't respond to him, doesn't say anything, and just looks down at the ground. They all just look down at the ground. Whenever they get there, they're immediately whisked away and they're taken to New Zealand and never to be seen by that crew that was at McMurdo ever again. But there were a whole lot of rumors about how they were doing something around that hole in that no-fly zone, and that it had to do with aliens, and that they hoped that nothing happened to them. But I do know, if you look at anything about alien encounters and how that impacts you physically, It has the ability to totally throw you off, knocks you out for hours for some people. I mean, you can have a heart attack because they communicate, I guess, telepathically. And so we just don't have the capacity to deal with it.
Yeah, that's what Jesse Marcel said, the first guy who died a while ago, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Jesse Marcel was the first person to, I guess, arrive to the scene of the crash, of the crashed flying disc, per the U.S. Army's words, in July 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico. And he said it was weird because he said that there were three aliens. 2 were dead, which is kind of the widespread kind of agreement, is 2 were dead and 1 was badly injured. And he said that the one that was badly injured said to him, there's nothing you can do to help. Like, I'm going to die. But he goes, it was very weird because if there was no word spoken, he goes, it was just in my head. And he goes, and I didn't know what that was. And Colonel Corso, who worked in the Pentagon, who's very high up, who wrote the book The Day After Roswell, he died a while ago. I mean, he was a colonel in World War II. He's not a young guy, obviously. But his whole thing, too, is like he saw like an alien being in the desert near a crash. And he said friend or foe, and it telepathically said neither. But the point is it's an odd telepathic thing, right? Same guy, Admiral Byrd, on top of, saying that the next war will be fought with flying discs of immeasurable speed going from pole to pole. He also said, Admiral Byrd, look it up. He said that when he flew over... Look it up now! I'm telling you, Joe, it's interdimensional aliens. I'm just saying I have good sources. But really, he said that he flew over the South Pole, and he said that, I swear, his words are that he was taken down and he was basically debriefed by an alien race for 3 hours. And I know that sounds insane, but that is his words, not mine. And if you actually go back and find the itinerary, there was...
so much sense. That's what I don't get. People say it's a conspiracy or that it sounds insane. It actually makes way more sense than a lot of other theories that are out there.
Yeah.
And also, not all aliens communicate telepathically because there are humanoids that exist. And if you go down that whole path, which I'm happy to go down,
that's Alex Jones's other take on the Greys, right? He says that the Greys are actually sort of like drones that an even more advanced species uses to monitor us.
It's interesting that you say that because there is an interview done. It was a former U.S. Air Force colonel, and he was doing an interview with Anthony Sanchez, who's a UFO investigator. And Anthony recorded their conversation, and this U.S. Air Force colonel told the story about 2 species, and this is actually the origination story of how we got here. So they seeded us. 2 aliens. One were tall, pale humanoids. They were tall, lanky, white, and then there were the Greys. And he would call the tall, pale humanoids progenitors because they're the root race of our solar system. The progenitors would sneak on to the Greys' planets and steal minerals that they needed to survive. And we could talk about the planet they were living on and how their solar system is elliptical compared to like our solar system. And but that they went on to steal stuff to keep their planet going. And all-out war and Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. And the Greys chased them out. And so then whenever the progenitors arrived into our solar system, they first went to Mars. And that's why you see those Cydonia, the city of Cydonia, the markings, the mile-long like face, and all that same exact things that you see on the moon, on the backside as well as internally, are from those progenitors who are trying to make life happen for them. Because John Brandenburg, who's a nuclear physicist, and he actually did a conference at NASA to talk about this. He wrote a book. And the name of the book was called Death on Mars, actually. Death on Mars. And it was about Xenon 129.
Byproduct of nuclear warfare.
2 hydrogen bombs went off and it almost obliterated the progenitors' population. And so what they're trying to do is, 1, find a planet where they can survive and keep their race alive. But I'm not sure about the communication or the drone. I think that the Greys, according to this U.S. Air Force colonel, were just regular Greys. It's not like...
Yeah. Well, another odd thing is Joseph Mcmanagal, who I've been trying to get in contact with, but who Dr. Alexander knows, the guy that wrote the book Proof of Heaven. Everyone knows him. But Joseph Mcmanagal was the head of Project Stargate under the CIA in the Cold War, which was the remote viewing program, which the head of the CIA at the time, I think it was William Colby or William Casey, said Joseph Mcmanagal can see anything in the world at any time. And they use him for, if they want to find out where like general tank movements are, or if they want to, quote, see the ignition device of a Chinese nuclear weapon, they use this guy. And it was not like hocus pocus. This guy was like top secret clearance. And they tested one on him, and they gave him coordinates. And what he didn't know was that they were giving him coordinates of Mars. And I think people have heard this before, but where he says he saw like a destroyed civilization, and like the exact like I guess numbers and date was that it was supposed to be like 1 million or 1 billion BC on Mars. But his whole thing is, there's two faces on Mars. It's you said one of them, I don't remember it. What was the name of it? Sidonia, and the other is like it's called like Chaos Galactus or something, and it's on the exact other side. And he said, they were wiped out. And here's this guy, and he goes, they came to Earth, and they seeded Earth, and he says, before they even got to Mars, he said that they collapsed the super large planet that we know as the Sun. He goes, it was a super large gas giant. They collapsed it and said, "Let there be light." And that's how life started in the solar system. And that's what this head guy at the CIA said. what's going on? Like, what's actually, it's...
I haven't got that far down that yet. I haven't heard that part. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying something about being seated here. Mm-hmm. So if you go back into, the very beginning of time, the Sumerian text, they talked about how the Anunnaki were the aliens that came here, and that they found a lot of mineral rich things in Africa and the Middle East. But Africa is a super metal rich content, and they needed gold because of the elliptical. So, you have our solar system, and we're like this, and they're going like this. Mm-hmm. And so they needed gold to protect them from radiation on their planet. And so they would come to Earth and harvest it out of that. But they had these certain aliens called the Igigi, I-G-I-G-I. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they had them mining for gold and all the other things that they were looking for. But they grew weary and rebellious because that's not what they were supposed to do. They never signed on to be miners. And so that is supposedly, based on the Sumerian text, the origination of what became Adam. So the Anunnaki, the Enlil, the Enki, they all got together, and they all contributed DNA along with a female, a goddess, because she was the repository for what was to come. And they became Adam. And that's why they say, we became like them, because we knew the difference in life and death and knowledge of good and evil. What? I feel like you're wanting to say something.
No. I'm hooked. Well, I'm just thinking of all the weird similarities, right? Because what did Bob Lazar say? Bob Lazar said that on top of the whole, UFO thing, he said that we have been in contact with what we know as the Greys since I think I've watched this like a million times. Since man was a simian creature, they've interacted with our evolution 63 or 65 times, and they've made genetic modifications so that we can, I guess, survive better. Because, and I don't know what the goal is. He goes, I know, like, that's what I know from working at Area S4, is that there are, but it's just weird because there's these sort of like, it crosses like references and like eras of humanity. It's kind of the same story, right?
Yeah. The planet, by the way, was called Nibiru.
Yeah, Nibiru. Yeah.
It takes them 3,600 years to go around in an orbit. The problem that it poses for Earth actually is every 3,000 years, whenever it comes next to us, it imposes this heavy gravitational magnetic force, which causes devastation. And then they say the last one that happened and that we know of was the flood. Mm-hmm. different. So that's one argument. The other argument is that aliens actually destroyed the Earth because we were destroying the planet and we needed to take better care of it. And so they wiped out humans and did it again.
Well, we know for a fact, I remember this from evolutionary biology and at UGA, was that, there's the bottleneck event, and they're not sure if it was a volcano or if it was something else. But they know at one point in our history, humanity got down to about 10,000 people. And they said everyone was wiped out but that. What?
It wasn't just Noah and his family.
Might have been. I don't know. But it's like, but I mean, that's another thing, right? Is like,
Southern Baptist. So that's how I came to learn about the flood. I don't know how many people that are watching were religious at all, but it's been interesting going through this whole process. Side note, been interesting going through this whole process, and I was kind of raised to believe that if you believed in aliens, it was anti-biblical, and I've come to realize that that's absolutely not the case, that they actually mesh together very well, which is why I'm so outspoken and such a proponent about that, and having people watch Unacknowledged and trying to introduce them to this because interplay, I know, hopefully everyone watches it, and if not, this is like the fifth time I've said it.
Unacknowledged by Stephen Greer. Go watch it. It'll blow your brains out of your head like Kurt Cobain. It's insane. Yeah,
but Zecharia Sitchin, he actually translated the Sumerian tablets and wrote a book called Earth, the Seventh Planet. And that's because, we see it as the third planet from the sun, but the way that they orbited, if this story is true, then we are the seventh from the outside. And then another note is Maurice Chatelain was a NASA engineer, and he actually is the one who made this fantastic discovery. There were so many numbers in these Sumerian tablets that were larger than anything we would ever use or need, way beyond our comprehension. And he found out that whenever he would take these numbers and analyze them, and then he would divide by 60. I don't know why 60. If somebody is watching this and knows the answer and could put it in comments, that would be so great, and save me the trouble of having to look it up. But he divided by 60, and he found that they were the periods of the orbits of the planets, and they were notated to the second. The Sumerians were notating to the second, not the day, not the year, not the month, not the hour, to the second. And why would that be the case? Because they're communicating with other planets and there's interplanetary trade. They need to be able to calculate and plot trajectories and intersections and interceptions. And so he made that discovery in the 60s, and it was like transformative.
It's melting my head. But what's known for a fact is we know that the Sumerians, they had an accurate model of the solar system millennia before we did, we being modern man. And
right.
That's not a conspiracy. That's like in tablets and like engraved on like gold plates.
That's history. That's history.
Yeah.
So, there could be this argument, and I don't want to upset anybody in the science industry, is that one reason that they're not getting this stuff out there and putting it as conspiracy is because, science has become kind of the new world religion. And they don't want to admit to the fact that there are antecedent technologies that are far more advanced and things that before our time, and even now, they're more advanced than anything we have today. Yeah. And, for a long time, there was this missing link that they would talk about. And I think that, we are that missing link.
Well, I was going to say on Joe Rogan, he's had them on several times together over the past 5 years. Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, who both say that they explain what the flood was, and that's why they describe things like Göbekli Tepe, the precession of the precession of the equinoxes, where it's every 26,000 and 36,500 years, the world changes and I think the way it wobbles. Randall Carlson explains that an asteroid hit the North Pole and instantly melted the entire store of ice, which caused what we know as the flood. And there are all these proxy sediment deposits all over the world that you can find from it. It's in what's the one thing that permeates all religion. Everyone wants to slaughter each other from the dawn of time. But what's the one thing we can all agree on? Not the number of gods, not what humanity is here for. What's the one thing we can all agree on? There was a big old flood, right? Even Gilgamesh, it's hey, there was a flood, right? Everyone's just signing off. I mean, Muslims and Christians both sign off on there was a flood. Can we find some middle ground? But I mean, that's a weird thing where those two, they don't have any, they're not
Muslim Jews.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, they're not like you and I sitting here yelling about aliens, right? Or you're speaking in a moderate tone, I'm yelling about aliens. But like this is becoming this thing though that it's like these are some of the most viewed episodes on Joe Rogan, and it's becoming this bigger and bigger thing. And Graham Hancock,
YouTube is pushing,
what?
And they're pushing any episodes relating to aliens and UFOs. I have no idea why, but if you look up anything having to do with aliens, YouTube is well, now it's not on YouTube, so I don't know how Spotify is going to handle that.
Yeah, but I don't know either. But I mean,
but they're pushing a narrative.
Yeah.
And the question is why. And I think we have more stuff to talk about before we get to that point. But it's something good to keep in the back of your mind as we progress.
I mean, the whole thing is just insanity. It's I don't know. It just, and the thing is it's the perfect, I guess, thing to keep secret, because I think, as Bob Lazar said about UFOs at Area S4, he said, because you don't have to try to keep it secret. It keeps itself secret, right?
Well, because a lot of it is under the water, too. Right now.
What I mean is, like, cognitively, it keeps itself secret. Because, okay, we have, like, a stealth bomber, or developing the nuclear bomb and the Manhattan Project and enrich uranium. People are trying to pry into that. What is that? Oh, a big bomb? World War? They can put the pieces together pretty quickly. But when it's something like, hey, human civilization might have gone through several waves of development and then being suppressed by some godlike power, and there's actually a city under Antarctica, and we're in contact, and the Egyptians were in contact with aliens on Mars, it hides itself, because you just got to say it like I am right now, and there's a lot of people listening or watching going, I might unsubscribe from this psychopath. It hides itself. No, that's what they're thinking, and good. I hope they leave. But like, that's the point, though. Is like it hides itself.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, no, I mean, it totally makes sense. I'm kind of stuck on the fact that everything is under the water, which makes it easier to, right? Yeah. Because no one's still willing to admit it. Yeah. Nobody. No one is willing to admit it. Yeah. That guy came out from Israel that. I'm actually not sure why he decided to come out now, and other than the fact that he has a book coming out, I don't know if you have any insight on what you think about that.
That I honestly
interesting
timing, weird. I mean, 2020, kind of everything's off the, everything's up in the air, but like the chips are down.
Is just all weird.
But it's also weird because Commander Fravor, who is on Joe Rogan, that Navy commander, who is held in such high regard that he and his, I guess, squadron of fighter jets, they were tasked with flying above the LA airspace on September 11th. So this isn't some moron. He's the one that chased the UFO off the USS Nimitz, which is declassified and acknowledged by the Pentagon, right? East Coast, West Coast, they have the Go Fast, the Gimbal, and then the Tic Tac. Those are 3 separate UFOs that have been confirmed and talked about by these high military officials. But what did Commander Fravor say that's kind of a lesser known thing is he talks about how he knows stories from other reputable guys, but there's no video of it, of USOs, unidentifiable submerged objects, that he said are massive. He said they'd come right up and then go back down.
So that is actually the way that we would go into these. I feel better now.
I gotta.
Whenever we would go into these bases under the ice in Antarctica, we would get there primarily through submarines.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is this U.S. Navy SEAL, he said that whenever you would come up through the submarine, the landing dock was like a standard submarine landing dock, except for 0 decompression required. 0. You literally can just get out. You can just land it, dock it, get out. 0 decompression required. And it's negative 40 degrees outside. You get into this structure, and we should talk about the physical structures because there's multiples of them. But he gave insight into what he saw and the one that he visited. But it goes from like negative 40 degrees outside to immediately like 68 to 72 degrees inside. But there's no power source, or heat source, no generators, no wiring anywhere. The lights are in the walls, but there is no wiring or outlets or anything anywhere. The ceilings are like 23 to 28 foot tall. He said it took him 15 minutes to walk from one side of the room to the other. I mean, it's significantly, it's large. It's all under the ice.
Well, that's another thing Bob Lazar said. He goes at Area S4. He's like, one of the odd things was he goes, is the light. He goes, there's no light source. You can't put your hand up and see a shadow. He goes, there's just light. But he was like, that wasn't on the forefront of my mind because I was looking at a flying saucer. And he was like, so I was like, I'll tackle the light. I'll tackle the LEDs later. He's like, there is a craft from Zeta Reticuli. And there's a guy with an M16 pointing at my head. He was like, I'll worry about the dimmers later. I have to go to the bathroom real quick. So, Bethany, hold it down. I'm tasking you. I'm not pausing this. I'm tasking you with monologuing.
All right, sounds good.
Tell them where to find the Linda Moulton Howe video. Or I guess I can just link it.
Yeah, definitely just go check out earthfiles.com, her YouTube channel. Tommy will put that down in the description. She's really, really great. She's been involved for a number of years. Her primary method of getting information, other than her own personal research, has been through whistleblowers. And that is going to be the way of the future. Citizen journalism, people who are currently inside of all these organizations that are keeping these secrets, is going to require whistleblowers to come out and talk about the truth. And humans deserve to know the truth. And the last time I was on the podcast with Tommy, we talked about unacknowledged, and we talked about why is the government hiding the fact that aliens exist. And, I made the statement and I stand by it. Humans can handle the fact that aliens exist. It actually would be better for all of our lives if everyone knew. It would eliminate a lot of illnesses. It would help us in terms of our crops. It would do us a whole world of good. And the public deserves to know. The worst part about all of this is that, we have a government who is secretly communicating with, and this isn't just our government. I mean, there's a whole consortium of countries that are in this together. And but our government is secretly doing all of this activity, communicating and benefiting from whatever is happening down there in Antarctica and around the world. And then they're not communicating that with the public. And then they're also holding and penalizing journalists who are coming out, who are supposed to be protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, and what they have to say about it. So I was just talking to your people.
My peeps.
My people. I'm also a follower, and I watch literally probably all of your podcast episodes because I love your podcast.
That is flattering. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But we were just talking about how aliens, I was saying that last time I was on your podcast, we talked about aliens, and, I said, and I still stand by the fact that humans can handle it if they were just to acknowledge.
Yeah.
We can handle it.
It's 100%. But as we've talked about, and through unacknowledged, has nothing to do. That's a straw man argument by the powers that be. It's like, humans can't handle it. They'll jump out of the buildings. They can't. The Bible. No, it's because what it is a revolution in power source. And if you don't have a petrodollar, you can't control the world like you do, which is what these power hungry psychopaths feed on. That's what it is. It's.
Yeah, no, you're actually super right about that. And it all comes back down to that Antarctic treaty, where there were 12 countries that were involved, and they all agreed that they would follow the same. That fascinates me to no end.
Yeah. How
we go at war with each other and we kill so many lives over nothing. But then the one thing that could propel us into the future, into multiple universes, I mean, the Hubble telescope actually was able to take photos of 3 different universes, ours, and then 2 others. And there's life in all of those.
Yeah.
In all of them.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to transcend Earth, or people who are big into climate change or global warming, and the Earth is dying and we're destroying it. Help us get off of this planet.
Yeah.
There are other planets out there.
Yeah.
And our governments, these 12, but now there's 54 countries who are involved in this treaty. I mean, this is a whole effort of upper echelon people, and it happens a lot in DC of, people who just want to hold on to that power because it helps them instead of helping the rest of the population. And it's going to get to a point, and this is something that's interesting, and I love your take on it. Earth is apparently in trouble. Stephen Hawking a few years ago, one of his last public videos or statements that he made was that humans need to try to get off the earth as soon as possible. This former U.S. Navy SEAL on his whistleblower interview talked about how we need to get off this planet as soon as possible. And there are actually stations all around the world of these huge, massive shuttles or ships, rocket ships. And he didn't know if it was for people or if it was for things, and training, but they're all over the world, and they are prepared and ready to deploy into space, holding massive amounts of people and or equipment. And so what are we preparing for? This could go into Revelations, right? Yeah. We were talking about Revelations the other day, but my point is the upper echelon is hiding this for their own gains, and they're not acknowledging it to the public. I don't think it's because they don't think that we can handle it. I think it's because they've kept it a secret for so long. They've had that power for so long. What would benefit them to give it up? But it's going to get to a point. And now I'm circling back to whenever you left me to do my own monologuing. Citizen journalism is the way of the future. Whistleblowers are the way of the future. You're not going to keep it a secret for much longer, because there are people around the world, not just in our government, but in other governments, who understand what's at stake here. And they are going to come forward. And it's they're going to have to be really brave to do it, but they're going to do it. And we're going to find out one way or another in an official sense. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. Join the dark side and let the rants flow. But I like Tim Dillon's take on it. And he's like the comedian Tim Dillon, who I think is the funniest person to ever walk the planet. Current human civilization and last. He is the funniest human on the planet. But he loves conspiracies. He loves them probably.
Sometimes
he's awesome. But what he said, he's like, this is how I look at it. He's like, you got to give the people health care so that you can continue to treat them like crap. And he's like, because if you try to give them a non-living wage and no health care, they revolt. He goes, you got to be smart about it. You give them just enough that they keep working. And he goes, otherwise, that's why you have people starting to flip out, and soon they're going to start killing politicians. He's like, because you haven't given them enough. He's like, be smart. Just give them some penicillin in a 1-bedroom apartment, and then they'll stop attacking you. But I kind of look at the same as whistleblowers. You get to a point where enough people are like, dog, I got nothing going for me, and I saw a politician doing X, Y, or Z. They're like, screw it.
I don't think it has to do with that, though. Maybe for some people, but I think that most whistleblowers are brave patriots who are so enraged that their government, in any country, that their government is keeping whatever it is from the public.
That's true.
Even though the argument is that we may have been created as slaves to the alien race, we're not slaves to our government. Our government is supposed to be working for us.
Yeah.
We owe it to people to communicate and discuss what's happening, so that way we can all benefit from it.
That's true.
And have the ability to totally transform this planet and our societies.
Yeah, I guess
Growers are doing it. Some of them could be doing it for selfish gains, but for the most part, a lot of them, their lives are threatened. They lose their job as soon as they come out. They lose their benefits. Marriages are destroyed. Families are destroyed. Working with whistleblowers, sometimes I've seen that firsthand, and that's a whole new appreciation for it. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with you there.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I realized I was wrong as I was saying it. Ed Snowden was making 6 figures living in Hawaii with a smoking hot girlfriend. And he got hunted down. Now he is just like, God is looking out for him, because he is in Russia and his girlfriend went and joined him a couple of years ago, and now they're married.
And then he exposed the fact that our government was literally watching us on every single device known to man, and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
Him posting it doesn't change the fact that they're not doing it.
Yeah. That's like that. Yeah. That's like blowing the whistle on nuclear weapons and be like, I guess we got them. They're not going to stop making them. It's just like, I guess now you know.
That goes back, actually, I don't know why I keep going back to these bases under the water, but there are military bases under the water. The 70% of our Earth is water. We've only explored 5% of that. That drives me nuts. Oh. Why aren't we in our water? We're talking about space, and I love space. Obviously, I'm obsessed with it. But why aren't there people like me who are obsessed with the ocean that are trying to push people to go explore the oceans? but we have bases, all countries do, and they're actually doing missile testing. They have missile bases down under the ocean as well. And then the argument goes back to there also are probably alien bases, and that's why you see so many UFOs come in and out of the water. Now, there is actually a lot of activity with UFOs in lakes, but they're probably just charging their ships or something like that, or resting or doing something of that nature. But in the main bodies of water, there are bases under the ocean all over the place. Yeah. And Puerto Rico actually has a huge number of UFO sightings every year. And I love Puerto Rico. Have you ever been to Puerto Rico?
No.
It's beautiful. And the people are so nice and the food is so good. But this guy who is one of the UFO experts there, he actually was able to find anomalies based on NOAA maps of alien bases that he thinks are around Puerto Rico as well as around the entire rest of the planet. So there are bases under this water.
Well,
for going to Antarctica because it's a 35-year ban and you're not going, and there are places that are prohibited to go onto. Then maybe we just need to start scuba diving all the way down to the bottom.
Well, I'm just gonna say, yeah, we only know 5% of the bottom of the ocean, and it's right here. But I mean, that's what. Again, Commander Fravor said on Joe Rogan's podcast, they talked about how they were like lowering down a guy to pick up this like dummy training torpedo. They used to like shoot him down. These big orange torpedoes, they'd use them for like target practice. And then they'd like lower a guy down from the helicopter and he'd grab onto it and pull him back up. And he goes, we were doing it one time. And he goes, and we're looking at it from the guy like being lowered down can't see it, but we're high enough up. We start to see. And you can, everyone listening, look it up on YouTube. Look up the clip of Fravor saying this to Rogan. He goes, you can see this big dark mass start to appear under the water. And he goes, someone on the helicopter starts screaming. So the pilot starts like yanking up, and the Marine has no idea what's going on. He's like, why are you pulling me back up? And he goes, and the torpedo didn't get pulled underwater or like underwater. He goes, it's like if you like went up and like grabbed a like, I don't know, like a pool toy and then yanked it down as hard as you could. He goes, this thing was just yanked like big plume of water, and then it just lowered back down. And this is Commander Fravor. Like this, you don't get like a higher up, I guess, like respect than that. But it's also, it seems like that's like the last place anyone would ever think, right? It's just kind of like the ocean. It's just this, what the heck is down there? And that's, I don't know.
We have tunnels.
Yeah.
I mean, there are spaces, there are whole transportation systems down there, and the same exact idea that Elon Musk has about going to Mars, which, by the way, how much has he been read into the MJ12 program?
Mm-hmm. I love Elon because he just seems like he's sidestepping it. He's like, I don't need to be cleared into these like Illuminati groups. He's just like, I'm gonna build my own rockets and go.
Well, he gives me hope. He talks about building the city on Mars for any entrepreneur to go and to flourish. And so it'll be interesting to see who qualifies on getting onto Mars via his mechanisms compared to who the governments around the world have set aside. Because let's just assume something's going to happen horrible to the planet, whether that's an asteroid that hits us in 2029.
Apophis, shout out Apophis, Friday, April 13th, 2029.
Whether that's another alien race coming to destroy us, whether that's another alien race coming to destroy us because we've not taken care of the planet well enough. Let's say that either way, sure, we're not making it. Sure. We got to get off this earth as much as possible. Who's getting on these stations that are all around the world that are ready to go up into space? Because, it's probably not going to be me and you. No, it's not. No, it's, again, what Tim Dillon said. He goes, just get used to it, people. He goes, the rich are going to flee the planet. He goes, I think around 2035, 2040. We're at the end. Just enjoy it. He goes, one day you're going to see these magnificent craft leave out of the sky, and that's going to be them. And we're going to be really interested. He goes, we're just going to try to continue on with our race. Their goal is going to be to help continue on the human race. And then also help continue on the race of the humanoids that seeded us. And so who are the most ideal candidates? Yeah. It's almost very similar to, it's not like Hitler necessarily with the whole Aryan vibe,
but it kind of is.
Similar to like, is that going to help, or is that going to be a component of who qualifies? Not necessarily your race and your hair color, but I wonder how they're going to calculate who, or is it about the money you have? Is it because like on the Titanic, those who were wealthiest got on the ships first, or women and children? It'll just be interesting to see how they go about that process.
Well, I think the futurist Ray Kurzweil said it. And Ray Kurzweil was a science advisor to, I think, Reagan, Bush 1, and Clinton, and maybe Bush 2. And Ray Kurzweil said, Kurzweil, author of the Singularity is Near. And but he said that he thinks that the uber elite, not the 1%, Bernie Sanders, the 1% of the 1%. He said the very tippy top of like the top 500 families in the world. He thinks that they are turning into a new species, because what it is not good healthcare, it's perfect healthcare. It's stem cell treatments when you're 18, just to make sure nothing decays. It's zero stress. There's zero cortisol release because you never have to worry about anything. He thinks that they are, in a biological sense, going to turn into a new species. And then not only that, they will be physically augmented through artificial retinas, all these implants, Neuralink, and eventually they will be the ones that can leave the planet, and thus they will become like Homo solaris or like Homo cosmosis, but it's basically like spacefaring Homo sapiens. But it's very much, no, it's not down to your eye color and your skin color, which if it was, I would be fine. I'm white with blue eyes. I'm solid. But like,
I have blue eyes.
Okay, well, you can come too. But like, but it is kind of a thing, though, right? It is in a sense. It is a sort of natural selection of, and I'm not saying it's right, but just like it's not. There's nothing right about one saber-toothed tiger living over another subspecies because they killed them all. But that is what is happening. I think that's what we're seeing now, is a form of natural selection or Darwinian evolution. And it sucks because I'm not going to make it. You're not going to make it. But it does seem that that's who's kind of going, is that upper crust, the centabillionaires, Bezos, Gates, Musk. I don't know where we're going with that.
I've got like 5 different thoughts going through my head about how I would do this.
Good. Spit them all out.
Well, one, it's like that would actually lend credit to diseases that just pop up all of a sudden and kill off a portion of the population. Help weed out the weak, I guess. And no one is...
COVID-19.
What?
I said COVID-19.
Maybe not.
100%. Wuhan bioweapons lab. Harvard scientists making massive Harvard scientists going there for $10 million money wires. But let's not look into that.
It also, another thought process is like, wow, this can totally go into the whole idea of the Great Reset.
Yeah.
And how they're trying to tie in biotechnology, and how they're trying to not only transform certain aspects of our lives, but a lot of other aspects of our lives. I would encourage everybody watching this to go check into the Great Reset, which they're trying to push right now due to COVID-19. And we should not be trying to push the Great Reset. It's not a good idea.
It's a terrible idea. And it's not a conspiracy. It's what's talked about at the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. Yeah.
Right. And the videos the video I made you watch, he actually goes through Spyro. And we talked about this in the last episode. And so we need to link his video down there in your description so people can go watch it. It's a 20-minute video, but he uses their Great
words.
Reset advertisements and marketing to break it down. And he's like, they're hiding this in plain sight, people. Yeah. And it's so obvious when you watch it.
Yeah.
When you watch it,
it's so and it's so creepy. And that's the thing, is I don't think they're doing this.
So creepy.
And the thing is, I don't think they're doing this because COVID-19. I think that was part of the plan.
Yeah, this is already a part of the plan.
It happened in tandem. It's like it's like the idea of 9/11. Well, they were able to pass the Patriot Act. I'm like, that sounds an awful lot like Operation Northwoods.
Yeah, that's true. There's debate, though, about whether COVID was planned in a lab and released on purpose, or if it happened naturally or through an accident. So that's kind of what I was posing the question. At the
Wuhan biolab. Just a coincidence. It'd be like if a world-altering pandemic. This isn't H1N1. Nothing has happened like this since 1918. That'd be like if this happened, and it started in the hotel, or in the apartment block. And I know this because I used to drive by there going to middle school. It would be like this if this happened at the apartment blocks that are across the street from the CDC. Drove by them every day for 4 years. That'd be like, wow, what a coincidence. Huh. And it'd be like, yeah. And not only that, imagine if only America was benefiting the most. Everyone would be like, huh, that's a real head scratcher. What do you know? I guess Epstein committed suicide. What do you know? It's one of those things where it's like the answer is just staring you in the face. And that's what Terence McKenna said. The problem isn't finding the answer, it's facing the answer. It's staring you in the face. And it's like, we have these people at the World Economic Forum. You look at it right now, every mom and pop store is closed, but then you can go look at Costco, Walmart, everyone's milling around. What is this? This is raising the level of the water in the pool so that everyone under 6 feet drowns. This is what it is they're wiping out all these things. So it's, what is that? A consolidation of power. Just like the consolidation of media or the consolidation of internet providers, it's all one thing. Why? Because it's a lot easier to control a couple things at the very top. And what is the point of doing all of that? It's the same thing as saying, well, we can't limit free speech, but we can shadow ban you. Well, if everything moves to just a couple of massive corporations that provide all goods and services, well, then what you can do is implement the CCP social credit score. You can't buy there. You don't have, Mr. Kerrigan, you don't have enough credits. You said some hateful things on that podcast last week. Sorry, I have my Alex Jones shirt on. I'm getting all hype. It's...
No, I mean, no, you're totally right, though. It makes sense. And it's a slippery slope. And I think our founding fathers had it right when, it's liberty or security and safety.
Yeah,
and
not both.
But this is something that transcends even America.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I'm so passionate about getting this information out there. Yeah. And I want to go to Antarctica so bad. We should go. And we'll probably never be heard from again. But
we'll live stream it. Alex Jones was searching Flat Earth or finding Flat. It was the movie he wanted to make with Eddie Bravo. You know what I was talking about? We'll go down there, Rogan. You'll go down there.
Funding.
Well, I've got enough with the money. I've got the money. You go down there. There's gonna be cats knocking things off you.
Whoa.
I don't want to go. Choke me out.
That was a good episode. I'm glad you sent it to me. It was very long, though. It was like 4 hours.
It is. And for everyone watching, I have a sweatshirt on of Alex Jones, and the rant is actually from that episode. Well, from both episodes, 9/11 and that one. I think 12:55. I don't know why I'm acting like I don't know the exact.
Not watching or listening to you instead. You should. Can you read any of it or no? Well, it's dark over there. No one even watching it can read it either.
Well, whatever. Sucks to suck. But, yeah, it's...
You're kind of like the black sun over there, and I'm kind of like the white sun in my very well-lit room.
Well, this podcast, it's all about duality. We're talking about good and evil. We're talking about the light and the darkness, right? It's
structures. We haven't gotten to that yet.
I was about to say, well, you're gonna be really mad. I have to pee again, because Bethany has a terrible bladder apparently, and I always have to accommodate for her. But we were getting on to alien structures, which we've been dodging back and forth. So let's finally address it.
I know. I don't know why you just don't want to get into this because
I work for NASA and I have to be part of the cover-up. Why can you not read Morse code? I'm blinking and I'm telling you I'm in danger. But I guess the gig's up. We
will go missing in the next few days or weeks. Hopefully your followers will
This episode will never be uploaded. This is it. And they're coming for you next. That's why they have me still talking to you. But, so... Underground structures, Antarctica. Take it away.
Yeah. So this is based on what the former U.S. Navy SEAL, and he was a Navy SEAL from 1987 through, I think, 2004. But he got there the first time through an aircraft carrier. They had like Nighthawk helicopters that went down. Mm-hmm. It was 50 feet under the ice. Whenever you first get there, you see an octagon inside of another octagon inside of another octagon, and it goes down deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's about 1.5 to 2 miles under the ice. And you get there and you have a door, and the door is huge, black, and very heavy. He said that it was about 18 feet thick to 30 feet thick, but I think he eventually said it was like closer to the 18 feet thick. There were no standard hinges on it, nothing you would see on any doors that you would see that we have or any other countries have for that matter. One on the top and one on the bottom. And even though it was so heavy, I mean, this is like super heavy material it's made out of, you could push it with one finger and it would immediately slide open. And it slides open, and then you're looking at 9 acres in front of you of room. and it's lit from the walls, from the floor to the ceiling. But again, they could find no light source, no switches, no outlets, no wires anywhere. I mean, he was walking up and down the walls trying to figure this out. And it was green. It was a lime green color of light. And whenever he said the ceilings were 22 to 28 feet tall, the walls were lined with hieroglyphics that were not Egyptian and they were not Mayan, but they were similar in style, but not the same. And then it took him 15 minutes to walk from one side of the room to the other. And then in the back, it looks like the wall ends, but then when you get to the back wall, it's a ramp, and the ramp goes down into two other rooms. The doors are all shaped in octagon shapes, and they all have also multiple acres in that room. And he said that it was a visual trick to the eye, and that on the top right of the door, there was a pyramid structure that looked to be what he said a starting point, or it could be like a point on a map. A star map, if anybody's looked at, in your audience has looked into star maps, the way that is, I wish you could show photos like while we're doing this and people could like look at what I'm talking about. But essentially it just layers out, the different universes that the Hubble telescope was able to capture. And it always starts, the starting point is always in the Milky Way. It's always our universe first, which is interesting. And why do you think that is? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, at first guess, I would say probably like anthropomorphic principle, right? We think that the sun rotates around us, and then we thought we were the only galaxy, and then we found other, quote, island universes, which turned out to be galaxies. I would say probably just the human mind. That's my 2 cents, is probably...
Yeah, but think about it. Like, if other aliens are coming from other universes... I don't know how to answer, actually. I don't have an answer for this. It's just something that I'm pondering. It's like, I wonder why we're the center of the...
Yeah.
Or maybe go to another universe and then their things on the top right of their doors and their alien structures on their planets or the universe that they're currently in.
Yeah. So wait, whose star maps are they ours or theirs? If it's theirs and we're the center, that's odd. If it's ours and we're the center...
Oh.
Okay. Well, okay, that's hairy.
Go in and communicate and do interplanetary trading with aliens in Antarctica.
Well, again, that's what Bob Lazar said about. He said the third level of the flying saucer he was in. He goes, it had this like map, like a translucent map, but he wasn't cleared to work on that. Sorry, go on.
No, yeah. So we can, and I want to circle back to that really quick. I just want to talk about the type of humanoid that supposedly seeded us. They look like humans, and they have skulls like humans, some larger, some smaller. They don't have hair, but they look human. Just a little bit odd. Another side note, I don't necessarily believe in lizard people per se, but if we wanted to get into, our aliens currently existing among us and people that kind of have different structures or famous people that look different over time. You see all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. Well,
it would be a plausible theory.
Yeah, well, that's David Icke's theory, right?
What?
That's David Icke's theory.
What's his theory?
His theory is that the reason why Earth is always war-torn and there's like artificial famine and resource scarcity is because there are a group of lizards from Draco, the star system, and that they feed off of our negative energy. That's his theory. That's not what I believe, but that's his. But yeah, he's been pushing that for a while. But what you said about humanoid looking like humans, I don't think that's odd at all. I don't think they look like humans. I think we probably look like them.
Well, yeah, exactly right. We do look like...
It's not that they look like us.
They're far more superior in strength. Their mental capacity is far more superior, and strategically, they are far more superior. The way that they're able to calculate the long ball game, and how to go about it, which is the biggest argument against, why haven't they? Because people, when I talk about aliens, they're like, aliens existed. Why wouldn't they just destroy all of mankind and come and just take over the planet. I'm like, because they create.
Yeah, they don't want to destroy it. They created it.
Right, like they helped make the Earth what it is, and they want to continue in their own race and keep using the minerals here on this planet. But regardless, that's just another tangent. Sorry, side note. But also in these alien buildings that are all over the place, and we can talk about where they are in a minute. But there's a black sun that is on the doors of all of the doors in this structure in Antarctica that this U.S. naval officer went to, and it resembles, it's a 12-arm symbol, and it totally goes back to Hitler and what we were talking about earlier with the swastika. And I said we were going to have to come back to this later on in the episode. So the first swastika I told you earlier was in Iran, Iraq. It was on the bottom of a bowl in Iraq in 5000 BC. It was painted on the bottom of a bowl. But if you look throughout history, they had the black sun where it was like shining. It meant that it was something that was shining inside of us. And they had them on Babylonian tablets. They had in the Indus River. So in Aryabhata, the first people to consider themselves Aryan, they actually had sun wheels that were 4, 6, and 8 rays extending out, and that was kind of to calculate the periods. In the 9th century BC, they were on the Babylonian tablets, and then on one of them, they told a story on these Babylonian tablets, and I actually took a photo of the quote, and it was, white sun beaming above the world earth, you give the light of day. Black sun shining inside us, you give the power of knowledge, reflecting the kingdom of Atland, which was high at the pillar of heaven before the sea rage devoured it. And if you look up the kingdom of Atland, that's what Plato talked about as being Atlantis. Oh. Atlantis was a circular city that was technologically more advanced than anywhere else. Yeah. It was all of a sudden destroyed. If you look into it, it would probably be, it could have been a whole city inhabited by extraterrestrials, and then it also could have been taken down by extraterrestrials that were at war either with those aliens or with the planet. And so then you also find in 1550 to 1000 BC, there were sun wheels found in Switzerland, and they had 12 rays that extended out, which stood for the passage of the sun. Around the same time in Germany, they had sun wheels that had 5 to 7 arms, and they actually found them buried. A lot of them were found buried in women's graves. And it stood for the primal feminine energy that they give birth to eternal life. And the Celts of Western Europe, they had sun wheels that symbolized the energy of the universe. And so between 1936 and 1942, Hitler and his guy Heinrich Himmler, they had a 12-armed sun, and they recreated it and had it inlaid in green, and they had it in buildings, and it was the rays had 290-degree angles, and at the end of each arm, and that to them represented their brutal SS security squads. Oh. And SS, their 290-degree angles, they called them lightning. Yeah. And so that links, SS with nature to Hitler and his obsession to expand the Aryan dominance on Earth. And so then you get to the point in the 19th century when the writer Arthur de Gobino, I can't say French anything, but the one who wrote about the inequality of the human race, which made the Aryan race a political ideology. And so then you look at how Iran, they had on their artwork, all of these extraterrestrial things etched in their stone. And one example of that is in the Persepolis stone, they had these ancient curly-haired men that were linked to superior alien beings. But back to Hitler really quick. So whenever he decided to take the swastika, from that exact same thing, the sun, the black sun. But what he did is, instead of where in India they had the swastika to symbolize the sun as prosperity, they had it clockwise. They also had a counterclockwise sun wheel to symbolize night, or the tantric aspects of sex and sexual intercourse. And so Hitler took these old positive swastikas and they colored it black, and they flipped the arms, and they had them painted in red, black, and white, which are colors that symbolize power and control. And so it's interesting. This U.S. naval officer saw the black sun painted on all of the doors in the building in this one structure in Antarctica. And, it's like, how and where and when did the sun wheel kind of evolve from? And, some people see it as the black sun as a cult of Satanism. Some see it as a power of a semblance of power of energy in the universe. And so they also actually found that exact same thing in physics, where you have the 90-degree arrows representing electrons accelerated through space at the speed of light and radiating electromagnetic radiation to the shape of a sphere. Is depicted by two 90-degree angles at the end of each arrow, similar to the two 90-degree arrows in the black sun. And it's dipping in and out of the speed of light through portal holes and magnetic fields. And is that the key to traveling through universes? And that's kind of like where I want to segue into this. But before I do, Sumerian Sanskrit to Hitler to modern physics, I'm curious as to your thoughts about, did Hitler have that in mind? Do you think that there's a connection there? And before I let you answer that, Nicholas Goodrick Clark, that was the author I was trying to think of earlier. He wrote a book called The Black Sun, Aryan Cults, Esoteric Nazism, and the Politics of Identity. And he quoted in that, Nazis had already prepared a secret refuge beneath the ice cap of Antarctica, possibly in alliance with Hyperboreans, described as new tall other intelligences who long ago as Aryans colonized under the Earth's surface. And so would the black sun be tied to Nazis, and could it be considered evil? I guess is the question.
Well, I was going to say, going back to...
Did all that make sense? I had to read a lot of that because it's just like so much information.
Yes, well, I was thinking of the right angles I never thought about, but then, yeah, I do remember from physics, it's electromagnetism going at right angles causes magnetism, and then magnetism going at right angles causes flux, Flux. It's just one thing I remember. But yeah, I think of Admiral Byrd, who said that his words, not mine, went to a cavern in Antarctica and was briefed by these big, 10 feet tall, humanoids. His words, not mine. And you can go back and find the itinerary of his flight, and it was indeed delayed 3 hours, which is odd.
You can find multiple accounts of people who've encountered these humanoids.
Yeah. I do.
After the black sun, and then how that actually the origination for what became the swastika for Hitler, and where he is.
Well, the swastika, right? Because it's mirrored. It's the ancient one.
Right, it goes the opposite direction. And for good things, it's like the evil side of it.
That's what I mean. It's inverted, right? And that's a common thing with Satanism, right? Is it takes everything from the church and inverts it, right? It's all about inversion. I remember hearing, who was it, Mike Barra, talk about the Reich of the Black Sun. That's where I've heard that word before. But also Justin Rowland's book, Nazis and the Occult. Hitler was obsessed with the occult. The Anunnaki Society was funded to plunder the world. I mean, Indiana Jones stuff, but was really happening.
Indiana Jones, isn't it?
It is, but that's again, hides itself. Is it so ludicrous? You bring it up and it's definitely
involved in all of this and trying to help them hide it. So
yeah, but but it goes into like where it hides itself, right? Because it's like you say this, and so it's, are you talking about Indiana Jones? And it's like, no, the Ananurba Society. They actually did. Annie Jacobson has a great book.
To try to throw you off the trail, so that way you would say it's a conspiracy theory whenever people actually try to come out about it.
Well, it's good. Well, I mean, that's. But yeah.
So, well, no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I went to say this earlier about Antarctica. It's one thing. One thing Graham Hancock always brings up, as well as Randall Carson, is the. And I actually did a solo rant episode about this, but the Piri Reis, Piri space Reis, the map, the map from 1513 that he said he copied from a map of antiquity, and that map was said to be copied, and this sort of copycat thing goes back to finally where it was like someone in ancient Egypt is like, I copied it from something of the furthest antiquity.
No one knows the author or the origination, so
no.
Didn't that come out in the 1500s, so?
But yeah, but no, the Piri Reis map is 1513.
Yeah.
And it was found...
Antarctica in there, a little sliver of it.
Well, it has Antarctica, but it has Antarctica and it has its coastline perfectly mapped. And there's two things that are of importance here. And this is not a conspiracy. There has not been no ice there for something like 16 to 30,000 years ago. This map is not from them. This is from wooden ships and exploring the world. This is 30 years before Columbus. Or our ability to see through the ice with sonar, we didn't get that until the Britain Expeditionary Force of 1949 went down there and mapped it. Either or. This guy in 1513 either had radar technology, or, equally as absurd, he somehow got this map from 15 to 30,000 years prior, predating the pyramids by 5,000 years, that they managed to map.
So I think that
the publicly accepted age of pyramids is what I'm getting at. So 15,000 years before Christ. And then who's his face? Some Professor Hapgood looked at this in the 1960s, who was at Dartmouth in New Hampshire. Shout out New Hampshire. But he was looking at this Charles Hapgood, and Charles Hapgood looking at the Piri Reis map and realizing that even if let's say everything else before that is just hubbub, well, he got it from so and so, that got it from so and so. To me, that's like a direct lineage to ancient peoples. But let's pretend none of that's true. Let's just take what we know, the 1513 map in the Library of Congress, which is there. Charles Hapgood wrote to Albert Einstein, and that's how Graham Hancock opens his book, Fingerprint of the Gods, and it's the response from Einstein. And Einstein says something along the lines of, I get written by people with these ideas all the time, because they kind of look at, hey, if they can get an endorsement from me, then it must be valid. And he was like, needless to say, they're all trash. Like, the ideas are terrible. And he's like, this one has profound implications for the human race and the human history. I have no idea how it works. They wrote to the U.S. Air Force, and the U.S. Air Force got back to them and said, there is no logical explanation for why this is so, and it seems that we have a massive piece of human history missing. So it's like, Antarctica has been off the rails in 1513, and in 1513 they were looking at this going, where did we get this? And it goes back to like ancient Egypt, to where they were like, oh yeah, no, we have no idea where this came. Isn't that what Aristotle said, that he was talking to like Egyptians and they're like, we didn't build this, we found this. Like, Antarctica has been like the hub for tinfoil hats since like the wheel was the hot new product, right? Like, that was the Christmas buy.
For me.
What?
It was like made for me.
I know, it's Antarctica is my spirit. It is. But it's, I mean, what other better perfect place? You can go and get Antarctica on your weather app for your iPhone. You can go down and get the like the bases they have, and but what better place to hide everything than somewhere where it's a negative 130 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
Right, and it's interesting because it won't be that way forever because of climate change, and so it's going to. I'm thinking that maybe that is why we're starting to see more information about aliens and about this technology and about our communication with them, is because of climate. They're not going to be able to hide it if the ice structures are uncovered.
Yeah.
In Egypt, where they also have alien structures that were covered up. I mean, there are pyramids under the sand. And this U.S. naval officer, this whistleblower, he actually went to Egypt to extract an archaeologist who was in Iran. He escaped, and he made it to Cairo. And this professor was the one who told him that the Sphinx, which we think is like 14,000 years or 15,000 years, is actually 35,000 years old.
Yeah.
And the same archaeologist now works for the coalition. And the coalition are the people who were involved in the Antarctic Treaty. And on the U.S. government side, it's curious to I'm surprised you haven't asked me about, or we haven't talked about, you know, like where, who's funding it and who's working on it, who's going down in Antarctica, other than the fact that Lockheed Martin and all these other aerospace companies are moving down to Antarctica, and they're still doing that. That's happening like right now. Before we get into that, one side story. You mentioned New Hampshire, and that made me think about that. Who was that lady that was the very first famous alien abduction in the early? Hold on, I'm gonna find this. I have it written in my notebook somewhere. Betty or Billy? Oh, Betty and Barney Hill. The abduction that happened in September of 1961. So her and her husband were abducted for one day, and she ended up going through hypnosis later on in life. And whenever she was under hypnosis, she drew the exact same star map that is on these walls in this alien structure that this U.S. Navy SEAL officer saw in Antarctica. And it is the same exact thing. And it's all the trade routes. She drew out all the trade routes and all the different planets and some of the stars. So interplanetary trade has been happening for a long time. And also, you know, do you remember when Oumuamua happened a few years ago?
That long, skinny asteroid?
Yeah, and so it's not an asteroid.
No, yeah, that's for the
and that is another piece of evidence that we've been having interplanetary trade for, I mean, it's interplanetary trade. And so the Navy SEAL guy and the former U.S. Marine, they both admitted that their men were on this ship.
I mean, it kind of makes you think of, like, you know how they find ghost ships in the ocean? That just like they were abandoned ship for whatever reason, and they're just kind of floating around, but they get stuck in these currents, and like the ocean kind of just brings them around almost like an airport like train, like no one's actually driving it. That kind of makes me think of that as like, here's this ship and it's just on this calculated trajectory, and it's just like, no, but that's what I mean. It's like for like interstellar trade. That's what I mean. It's like it's like a big cargo ship, and it's just, there's no one on it, but we're looking at it like, oh, it's an asteroid, but it's like, no, this thing is just buzzing by on its like pre-scheduled route.
No, see, I think it was planned already. I mean, it was something that was planned to happen because we're in constant communication with aliens every single day.
Yeah.
The people who are doing this are the U.S. Cyber Command, and you think Cyber Command, like, what's that about?
Hold on. Hold on. We're talking about fun because Bethany has a terrible bladder. She keeps going to the bathroom, but it's but we're talking about funding. How is this all getting funded? And right, I mean, you can't help but think about, we're also $19 trillion in debt. Where's that debt really going? Because how else would you fund all this stuff?
Yeah, and so it's by the Cyber Command, and you would think like Cyber Command, don't they deal with, you know, technological stuff, and really they became kind of the core communications agency between us and aliens. And this naval officer had a friend who worked for the NSA and then became the director of one of the departments for the Cyber Command. And all of the military forces are involved in it. I'm curious about Space Force and like what their involvement is, or if it's totally separate. Probably not totally separate, but it could be. But yeah, no one really knows. Actually, last time I looked it up, which was a little bit ago, but the 8th floor of the NSA, there really wasn't a lot of information out there. I'm sure one of your viewers can like look it up and see and then let us know about it. But that's who's running it. And
it's the 8th floor of the NSA building at Fort Meade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say about Space Force, that makes me think of the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, and the NSA, the National Security Agency, which was once known as no such agency, because these things operated for 30 plus years before anyone even knew they existed. Not what they did, before anyone knew they existed. I think Space Force, I don't think it's being created. I think it's being declassified. That's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think that whenever Trump was elected to office, that once he was read into everything, he realized kind of the situation that we're in. And I think our situation is a little bit more critical than we would like to think. We think that there's no sense of urgency here. Yeah. And I don't even know what a timeline looks like unless we're hit by Apophis, whatever number, 2029. But then also at the same time, aliens have helped us in the past. Whenever in 2016 there was a threat of solar flare. Do you remember when that happened? There was a threat of solar flare.
No.
I think the aliens actually helped us in that time. So there was an object that made a dent in one of Saturn's rings. Do you remember that?
No.
There were photos of it.
No.
So Google it. There. If you look up in 2016, a solar flare hazard that was going to destroy or significantly damage the Earth. All of a sudden, this object was making its way from the sun and made a dent in one of Saturn's rings. And I think that it was aliens trying to help us in that sense. But
Larry Holcomb, the author I had on yesterday, author of Presidents.
I will talk to Larry.
You're gonna talk to Larry in January. But he talks about how this has been a thing happening at ICBM silos in the United States and the Soviet Union since like the 60s, is that UFOs come down and tinker with them. And every time we start to get a little too big for our britches and we're going to let a couple of these things fly off the rails, said that's why there hasn't ever been nuclear war, is that's like a common theme amongst like missileers. He's like, oh, like they won't let us go to war. And it's like, who do you mean, who's they? And it's like,
if the theory is correct, and everything's right, nothing is proven, but if the theory is correct that we were created or seeded by progenitors, and last Earth on Mars was destroyed by 2 hydrogen bombs, so it makes sense that we get more UFO sightings, and they're like, what's going on down here? What are you guys thinking? I know you're from us and you're thinking like us, but stop.
That's like grabbing your like kid, and your kid's like 12, and you find him with vodka, and you're like, you'll thank me when I'm older, but you can't have this right now. And it's like, why? I just want to have a couple drinks. And it's like, just pump the brakes, bud. Like, that's what it's kind of like, is they're looking at us. We're building these bigger and bigger nukes, atomic to hydrogen, nuclear to thermonuclear. And we're like, we're going to let these things pop off. And they're like, hey, no. But it's like, if we are their creations, if we are their petri dish, they're going to come down here and be like, like, we're going to remove these. Like, everything else they're not going to interact with, right? They're going to let us kind of battle it out and learn good and evil on our own. But when they see an example, or I guess a possibility of us wiping ourselves out, they'll come down and they'll be like, no, take that away, right? It's like, that's what I think it is. It's like, why wouldn't it be? They're just going to like kind of not let us blow shit up.
Do we have anything else to talk about in terms of, Cyber Command, or, because I'm done with that. Unless you have questions or you want to talk about something else. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Wilkes Land in Antarctica?
No.
So Wilkes Land is a place where there is a portal. And it's very similar to what they call a moon pool in a submarine. Whenever you can open the door and water doesn't flood into the submarine and drown you, the force keeps the water down, but you're able to go in and out of the water through that moon pool. It's actually very similar to, I'm sure you've seen Stargate. Actually,
I haven't.
What?
I haven't. I know.
What are you even doing with your life? How have you made it this far? Well, okay, fine. You need to watch Stargate. You should prioritize that in your life.
Put it on my playlist.
They have a portal in Stargate, and it looks like water.
Yeah.
But in real life, it's the exact same thing, except for it's not water, but it looks like water. It's square in shape instead of circular. And in Stargate, whenever you kind of go through the portal, you have like dust and stars kind of like shooting at you as you travel from one place to the other. In this, you literally walk through and you're immediately at your destination.
Yeah, instantaneous.
It's not painful. Nothing happens to you. No experience. And so we have these all around the Earth. And the most popular, it gets you from point A to point B, essentially.
Yeah, instantaneous.
And so, like, if you go to Harp in Alaska and you walk through the portal, it immediately takes you to Pearl Harbor, right outside of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii.
So where are you getting this from, though?
So this is from the same U.S. naval officer.
Okay.
And the U.S. Marine.
Okay.
So they both were privy to that information. This is from whistleblowers. So I don't have any photographic evidence.
No, sure. No, I was because it makes me think of the whole idea of the DoD base on Mars that was supposedly constructed under the Eisenhower administration, because they thought about, there are like if the world gets destroyed in a nuclear war, we need like 3 contingencies, and one was like Antarctica. Another was nuclear bunkers, which we have, and the third was true national security is going to a different planet. That's true security. But this whole thing was tinfoil hat. They go, yeah, that's how we got there. They go, it was teleportation. You just walk through in and out.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely want to talk about Mars, and that.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that.
Yes.
Because there's a lot to talk about there. But well, not a lot, but there's stuff to talk about. Other places that there are portals that they were told about. South America, there are several. There's the one in Antarctica, Alberta, Canada. There are 4 in Argentina, 3 in Egypt, 2 in Australia, although they weren't sure about what parts of Australia. And so, that's ways that aliens, humans, people in the military, people in cyber command are able to travel from one area to the other very quickly. Back to what you were saying about Mars, there is stuff happening on Mars outside of Elon Musk, things that the DoD, Cyber Command, things that they're working on. The moon is the same thing. So on the moon, we have structures that are on the backside of the moon, the dark side, as well as on the interior of the moon. I mean, it's a mothership.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole operation there. The former U.S. Marine guy, he claimed that there were 2,500 humanoids living on the moon right now, and that they're building tunnels, they're building things to survive, and to train and to test, and that they're doing the exact same thing on Mars. And so if you go back to this black sun and you go back to the equivalency to the physics of time travel, and how in physics with those that black sun wheel, how you're able to travel to different dimensions, different universes, different timelines. The options are kind of endless, I think. It's all related. It's all related to that whole idea.
What I was going to say is, another one, Joseph Mcmanagal, I just wrote down several notes, but Joseph Mcmanagal, the same guy that, I think William Casey, the head of the CIA, said this guy can say anything in the world. He said, not Unit 8200, that's like the Israeli NSA, but it's called Project 8200. And it's where this guy said, the head of the CIA's remote viewing program, said that there were four bases around the world under mountains. And I remember Mount Perdido, Mount Hayes, I think Kilimanjaro was one of them. I don't remember the last one. But there are these bases underground, these subterranean bases that were ancient, and they're all broadcasting to a space station in geosynchronous. And this is not my words, Joseph McMonagal's words. And he said that it's beaming something out into like deep space. And he says the role they have is that of a caretaker. They're taking care of Earth. They don't interact with us. They kind of make sure that like it doesn't go to shit. They at like the very parameters. They're like, they won't let us nuke ourselves, but that's about it. But they're kind of just like keeping tabs on Earth. Another one, Ben Rich, former head of the former CEO of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, who died in 1995. Everyone knows this quote: "We now have the technology to take ET home." Buzz Aldrin said that we need to look at Phobos, the little monolith on the moon of Mars. Edgar Mitchell, another Apollo astronaut, said that we are warned off the moon because we are too violent. What was the third astronaut? I can't remember his name. Not important. Another thing is the bell. The idea that we crashed parts of the lunar modules into the moon after the early Apollo programs put seismometers on the moon. And they said that it hit the moon, and the moon rung like a bell from anywhere from 10 to 11 hours to like 44 hours. And thus, it sounds, or it reacts as if it was hollow. So I don't really know where I'm tying all these things in together, but you can kind of like a blind person feeling around. You can kind of like feel around of these super high up people, head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, two of the 13 men or two of the 11 men to walk on the moon. Like, you have these weird things, and you can, if you start to piece all of them together, it all leads to that there is something far more fantastic than even our most ludicrous movies, and it hides itself. Sorry, I definitely just cut you off, but these are like all things I had to get out of my head.
No, it's fascinating. I love your rants. But no, it's I could totally see that. It's so interesting, and sometimes it's overwhelming to me how whenever you zoom out and you look at all these different, conspiracies or things that are actually true, and regardless, it's all one big web.
It's all part of one, yeah.
Everything connected together. And I think that we're so close to pinpointing like exactly what the truth is. The next time I come on your podcast, if your guests will have me back,
I don't care if they will. I will.
We should talk about, aliens and the Bible and Revelation. I feel like we're on a continuum here. So we first talked about aliens, now we're talking about Antarctica, and then all these other undercover bases around the world. And then next episode, we should talk about what the future looks like, because these stations around the planet that are already ready to be deployed into space, that are capable of holding massive amount of people, are real.
Yeah, I mean,
real.
I think that the reality of whatever's going on is probably so insane that I do think it hides itself. Mm-hmm. It's not a president having an affair where it's like, ooh, what's going on there? It's not leaking the iPhone 15 where it's like, whoa, ho, ho. It's so absurd that you look at it, and it's like what Bob Lazar said. He goes, I think the reason they didn't kill me is because they figured that it didn't matter what I said. People would just look at me and be like, oh, really? You worked on flying saucers? Like, kind of hides itself, right? Kind of hides itself. It's just so insane that it kind of hides itself. But I think that is probably the reality, is that the reality is just so out of this world, no pun intended. It probably bends your mind. Not just like, oh, there are flying saucers. It's probably like, no, the Great Pyramids are actually relay systems to an alien from a different star system, and we're fighting these people here, and it's all about the subterranean. It's Atlantis, to the point where your eyes fall out of your head, and you're just like, no, it can't be true. So you just reject it.
Well, one, I think that if you go into all of this with an open mind, you would be very surprised at how much sense.
Yeah.
Even if the details are off, maybe if you and I are saying things that are totally inaccurate, which could very well be the case. And I'm always learning. I'm always open to learning things. I don't claim to know everything. Yeah. I don't know half of it.
Yeah.
But if you go into it, accept or open to the idea that the general premise of what we're talking about could be true, it makes so much sense about everything else going on in our world.
Yeah.
And once we can just wrap our brains, that's why it would make things things would progress faster if the government would just out it and acknowledge it and then we can introduce interplanetary trade at a well-known scale, and we could change the lives here for now. And maybe there is no hope. Maybe what's happening here on Earth is indefensible. That could totally be the case. But then let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And let's figure out if there's a way to have a solution, or if there's a species of alien out there that can help us. And if not, or if maybe we're not even fighting against the Earth, maybe we're fighting against an impending doom from another species. This is why you have to have me back on.
Yeah.
We can talk about all of that stuff, what all of the theories could be. If people, humans, we deserve to know by the governments that we elect to represent us. They are not above us in terms of being privy to that information. And that is why it is so important to have whistleblowers and citizen journalists who are willing to be brave enough to step forward and tell the public. And I know that you could lose your job, your whole life could be destroyed, but it is like so necessary.
Yeah.
So necessary. For the betterment of mankind. So that's kind of my.
We need another Snowden or Assange or Manning or Lazar. We need another one. We need one to come out. Yeah, we need a huge one to come out. I think what Trump needs to do is Trump just needs to tweet pictures from like Area 51 or like from the backside of the moon.
Yeah, it makes you wonder actually what he was actually talking about with Putin.
Yeah, or the other day when he said, I just want to keep the world from killing itself.
Or whenever he said he's like, they're after me, but they're actually after you.
Oh, yeah, no, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just standing between them.
No way.
You gotta think, well, I mean, what did JFK say? There is a plot on this planet to enslave every man, woman, and child, and I will use this high and noble office to stop it.
Yep, all this time. And then all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah, right? I think that's probably what it is, though, is I think you probably get in there, and it's not only is it insane and evil and insidious, no one would even believe you. If you were like, I'm trying to stop the aliens and the Chi-Coms from, like, slaughtering all of you, you'd be like, oh, really? Orange Man bad.
Faith in people than that a little bit. I think that if you present people with information, and again, this goes back to the first podcast I did with you, where the internet, I have a love-hate with it. But overall, we have information at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of crap out there, but there's also a lot of legitimate information out there that we have access to that we otherwise would not have access to if it were not for the internet. And I think that people overall can be open to what the ideas you and I are discussing. Even if they don't agree with us, they can still come to the table saying, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. You know, what do you have to lose is kind of like what I would say, you know, like why not contemplate it?
Yeah.
You know,
I think more people are opening their minds to it. I do. I think.
The real woke.
Yeah. The real woke. Well, again, to quote Tim Dillon, he was like, you know, he goes, everyone that's been paying attention to conspiracies, he's like, everything with Epstein, he goes, yeah, we hypothesized it, but it wasn't too surprising. He's like, I mean, it's evil, but he goes, you kind of expected it. You're like, okay, they sacrifice children on private islands. You're like, okay, that's par for the, like, that's expected. These are the people that, you know, did Vietnam and Pearl Harbor and 9/11. He goes, I get it. He goes, the problem is people that never looked into any conspiracies, and then the first thing they get introduced to is Pizzagate. He goes, their minds melt, and then they have to, nothing makes sense anymore. That's what I think.
If you look into it, it's not just about sex trafficking, which is a huge problem. I know you've had many brilliant people on to talk about that. It's also about testing and the advancement of the human race.
Yeah.
And hybrid breeds.
Yeah. Animal-human hybrids, Alex Jones. But not only that, I mean, think about you.
I'll bring Alex Jones into this. But even with, if I'm saying you could even link it back to aliens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't even.
Everything's linked together. Everything.
It's all linked together. It's not. I mean, Unit 731 though in Japan, like we know they did that to American soldiers. Why wouldn't aliens do it to us? Or why wouldn't we do it for aliens? Just hey, you know, want some people, want some human tissue? You know, give us the flying saucers. Alex Jones.
Flying saucers are the least of our worries, I'm afraid. But
I think that's one of like the quotes. I don't remember who it was. Was it Oh, what the heck is his name? Walter Bosley. I remember he said, he was like, as you go farther down the rabbit hole, he goes, you start to realize you're like, oh, flying saucers are just like, He's like, that's just like the opening credits. He's like, what?
Tip of the iceberg.
Really, he's like, that's just like the popcorn at the beginning of the movie. He was like, as you start to look at it, he goes, just all like your mind melts. But I think that's probably it.
Yeah, I think that I've kind of gone over pretty much the majority of everything I know about Antarctica. I'm curious to see what people say in the comments. I'd love additional resources, and gotta work together.
I will. Yeah, I'll put I'll compile all the links that. Yeah, we'll work on that, and I'll put those in the sticky in the top comment and in the description. And all right, well, I'm gonna stop recording in a second, but Bethany Rolando.
What'd you say?
I was gonna say, Bethany Rolando, thank you very much for coming back on. It's always a pleasure. I need someone that I can share my brain with.
I told you to bring your extra large tinfoil hat today, so
yeah. Well, I didn't even put one on. I don't need tinfoil anything. I'll just take it all. I don't need protection. It's give it to me. I got my Alex Jones sweatshirt on. I am immune to evil spirits. I am open. I am like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates combined together.
Well, this was so much fun. Thanks for having me back on. I look forward to hopefully next time.
Thank you. And hold on. Let me, all right. Well, thanks everybody, and stay safe. God bless. Friday, having on Delta Force guys. We're going to talk about election fraud, and YouTube is now canceling channels that do anything about election fraud. So, Friday might be the last YouTube podcast, but we're on Rumble and BitChute, so it doesn't matter. We're going to burn it down anyway. So, stay tuned.